User error, I think, is always the problem. So Chantel's going to talk to us about CPS's goals, how they operate, how they're different from CASA, and the basic process. Our assistant district attorney could not be here tonight, so we'll try to catch him on another night. He's brand new, like started what, last Wednesday? Yes. Was his first Wednesday in court. So yeah, so but he was a CPS assistant district attorney for child protection in Palestine, so he's done it before. So that's good. How was he? Did you like him?
He's getting his feet wet.
You didn't scare him off?
I did good.
All right, that's good. And CPS didn't scare him off either?
No, he's hanging in there.
All right, so hopefully he'll be able to join us at a later date. So we've got a few minutes. Actually, while everyone's paying attention, sorry Chantel, I have a few announcements. So, volunteer references. The email reference will be from a place called Volunteer Reference Survey, and the subject line will say Volunteer Applicant Reference Survey. So just alert your references that that's what's coming. We're getting a lot of them back. If they bounce back, I'll let you know if somehow you mistyped it or something, but it sends it straight from the application. Okay, parking lot. I took some questions off the parking lot. I'm going to let you answer that one in a minute. Why do kids move around in foster care? Do you guys feel like we've answered this, or you want more information? Yes, no? Why do kids move around?
Is it behavior-based?
It can be behavior-based. It can be that foster mom and dad say, that's it, I'm putting in my 30-day notice, I can't handle this anymore. It could be that their service level, their level of care goes up or goes down, and I'm not licensed for that, so they have to move. They might find a relative, and so they get out of what I think of as traditional foster care with strangers and go live with a relative. It can be a lot of things. Okay. Who we're allowed to share information with, did that become clearer with our confidentiality training? Basically, like what, 3 groups of people, CPS, attorneys. Do we share with foster parents?
No.
No. Oh, see, they all learned. Good. And confidentiality, privacy for your notes. We are going to be giving you a CASA email. You can keep everything in that drive, that Google Drive, and then we'll just get rid of it when you're not a CASA anymore. We talked about keeping your notes confidential. It's the same thing with your electronic files. So you might want to put a password on things, things like that. Also, check the parking lot to see if some of your questions have been answered. If not, then we'll leave them up there. We're tossing our cares away. We tossed them away the first day. All right, so somebody else is also concerned about balancing work and CASA role. Anything I can do to make you feel better about that until you take a case? Probably not. Oh, goodness.
Rule of thumb, you're the volunteer, not the caseworker.
Oh, very nice.
So don't feel like you're burdened. You have to do late hours and all of it. You're not.
You're very nice, Chantel. All right. Oh, my goodness. I'm having trouble today. It's been Monday all day. Important duties of a CASA. We had our minimum expectations of once a month and every 3 months. I think your most important duty is to be that information gatherer and let the court know what's going on with the child and their placement. I would say, you know, you've got more time and attention to give those kids in that case than anybody else. You will have more information than anyone else. So you're going to see your kids once a month, but gathering all that information from foster parents, parents, doctors, therapists, all of that, that is really the meat of the role. Okay? And doing something inappropriate. Well, hopefully we won't let you do that. Hopefully you'll be running if you're thinking to yourself, should I do that? Don't. Ask first. Just ask first. And then, like we've had situations where CASA volunteers transported a mom on a case. Appropriate or not appropriate? Against the rules, inappropriate. Yeah. What about babysitting the kids on your CASA case? No. And we say that in training, right? Yeah. You're clear on that. We had somebody do that. And so it's just because you build a relationship, you care about these kids, you want to help the families, you want to take care of the foster parents, don't do it. Okay? Somebody else was worried about court appearance. Has everybody observed court, or do you still have quite a few that need to do it? Let's come back to that after everyone's observed court. Those of you that went to court on Wednesday, were you surprised by anything?
Not really.
Well, you've been there before, Linda. You don't count. No, you do. What, did anything surprise you about it?
It doesn't even have anything to do with kids, but what surprised me was all the side talking.
Oh, me too.
All the
Bothers me.
side talking and people giggling when, you know, it's really impacting someone else's life. And there's, you know, there were two ladies sitting next to me who you could tell were really nervous, and she was kind of crying quietly. She was going to go up any minute. And you have people in front and they're side talking and giggling and talking, you know, and keeping on their phones.
That's right.
It was very distracting.
It was.
And it was very hard to hear.
Very hard to hear.
If you're not sitting right up in the front, you cannot hear anything.
Well, that won't change no matter what courtroom.
That will
you go.
not change.
No, and
The last courtroom, we used to have microphones and he would turn the system on, but for whatever reasons, he won't turn it on in this courtroom. Unless, typically he doesn't turn it on until it's a trial because they have to record every second of it.
Okay.
And so right now, he pretty much just goes with the transcript.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, and the good news is there's always somebody in court for CASA taking notes, and we'll put those notes into Optima.
Okay.
So if you were sitting there and you're thinking, I didn't hear that, I have no idea when the next hearing date is and what happened, it'll be in Optima for you. Okay, all right, now Chantel is on. I think I've done everything. Handout videos are up. If you didn't see my email, those of you who missed training on Saturday or Monday, videos are up, and finally. And we've got all that. And then those of you who missed Saturday, when we take a break or make a transition, come over to this table. There's 5 of us, and we need to all get together and discuss it, make a date to discuss it, okay? All right, now you're on, Chantel.
All right.
Finally.
Do I need to go through the entire process?
How do you guys feel about CPS case entering the system? You want to go over that again? How a case comes in, how a kid comes into care? Yay, nay?
I'll go with CPS knowledge of how a case enters the system. We'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
All right, so basically there's an intake location near Austin, Texas that receives this 1-800 number, all the calls come in. And they have 3 different rulings, which is a P1, a P2, and I can't think of the third one off the top of my head, but that basically means that somebody called in but they didn't have enough information. So they can't really move forward with that one. A P1 means that somebody has to see that kid within 24 hours. It's the emergency. Either law enforcement is asking CPS to come out, or the child is just in grave danger, or somebody needs to come out and investigate immediately. For instance, if the child is in the hospital for an injury and we got to find a placement. A P2, it's my understanding, I believe they have up to 72 hours. We'll have to confirm that one again. They've changed the policy so much. But they have a little bit more time to go out and investigate what's going on with that situation. And that's typically like your neglectful supervision cases and things to that effect. So once they've determined that, then an investigator will go out. That investigator will determine whether there's enough information to proceed with the case. They have the option to rule it out and say that no, there is no concerns of whatever that allegation was. Or they can do family-based safety services, which means that we see a concern, we think that this family needs some help, but not enough to file a suit against them and petition for custody of their children. So that's family-based safety services, kind of help the parents work through their issues. Typically their services are not court-ordered, but depending on the circumstances, they can have court-ordered services. But normally it's just by agreement with them. And they're kind of responsible for getting their own services up and going. Then you have what we have conservatorship, and it's typically what we are assigned to. CASA does not, very seldom do we take FBSS cases. We've only had 2 in my affiliation with the department as well as with CASA. So, but conservatorship is the next one, and that's where the department, the state of Texas, is petitioning for custody, temporary custody of the children, and stating that the children are in enough danger that these parents are not able to do it, and either they do this service plan and make some things happen, or they're going to put these children up for adoption, be it with a relative or someone else. That's not always the decision. There's so many different outcomes, and we'll go over the outcomes and what the permanency goals are. So that's kind of how that works. Are there any questions about that process in FBSS? Because we did have one Wednesday that was FBSS.
And can you explain how that worked on Wednesday?
Okay, so the legal side of it, there is an ex parte hearing, and that is when the affidavit is submitted by the investigator to the courts, and the judge deems what they need to do from that point forward. And then the parents are notified, typically are served, that they need to appear before the judge. Then you have an adversary hearing. And at that adversary hearing, the parents can state that they don't agree with the department, and basically they will argue their stance, and then the department will bring forth their evidence on why they don't agree. And then it's up to the judge to determine whether temporary management conservatorship will be granted to the department, or I have a judge who will send children straight back home on a monitored return if he doesn't think that we need to pull straight out, but he doesn't think that they need to be in foster care either. That's in Burleson County. You don't see it too often here in Brazos County. Or the judge could say, I've heard enough, there's not enough evidence, we're not going to move forward. So that's kind of how that works. Or they can all come up with an agreement, place the children outside of the home, and that typically happens in family-based safety services and FBSS. So kind of how that one works. I feel like I'm overwhelming you all.
We're taking good notes.
Right.
Don't worry, we'll go over it again. So
yes.
Don't let your head hurt.
There are multiple permanency goals. So you have relative adoption, unrelated adoption, family reunification, permanent managing conservatorship, and that can be between the parents and a relative, the parents and a friend. That just means that the parent is not in a place to care for their child, but there's not enough grounds to terminate their parental rights. So they would do PMC with grandma or an aunt or brother or sister, something to that effect. I'm trying to think what else there is. I think those are the main ones that you'll see for the most part. The other ones, moving on to your allegations of abuse. It will either be physical abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, medical neglect, neglectful supervision, and then a wrapper, which is a refusal to assume parental responsibility. That one has changed this past year. It used to be if you wrappered your child and just said, I'm done, I no longer want to be a parent, and you're just turning your kid over, it automatically was held against you if CPS was ever ran on you. Well, what they're learning is that oftentimes it's not because the parents don't want to be parents to their children. Their kids have mental health issues and things to that effect, and they don't know what else to do. I have one right now in that situation that he has mental health issues, and these parents have literally exhausted every resource that they have to try to get him the help that they needed, so they needed assistance from the state. The only way they could do that was by wrapping their refusing to keep their parental responsibilities, but they're still involved with the case. So we're not seeking to terminate them. And if CPS were to run a background check, it wouldn't bar them from being like a foster home or being able to take their kids back.
Yeah, that just changed.
Yes, literally just changed, because we are seeing a lot of that. There's an increase in mental health issues and things to that effect, and parents really have just done all they can do. This is a little bit tougher cases to deal with. So yeah, but then you have some who, for instance, they'll put their child in a psych hospital and they're like, I'm not coming back. And that's completely different than you actually putting forth an effort to try to get your child help versus just saying, I think he's crazy, I put him in this hospital and I don't want to do this. So it is done case by case. It's not just automatically, it won't be bar them. It is looked at case by case on how it will reflect on their CPS history. So that's that.
How's CASA different from CPS?
Oh, Father God in heaven. I have so many volunteers who cross that line, I tell you. No, it's not that bad. The difference between CPS and CASA, the burden falls on the department. They are legally responsible and the legal parent for those children. That's not CASA's role. CASA's role as a volunteer is to be a voice to address concerns and issues that others may not see or may not have time to be attentive to, and we kind of fill in that gap between the department, parents, and services, and being that opposition to the court. That as a third party, this is what we see, we understand, and the department is bound by what we call red tape. They have policies and procedures and things that they have to go by. And CASA can come in and we can kind of push the envelope with some things, and that's a part of being appointed as guardian ad litem. The same thing is, we're appointing a guardian ad litem outside of the attorney. Attorney can actually do legal and guardian ad litem, but if they think it's gonna be a conflict of interest between what they can legally do, because they're there to represent their client, and when you have a 13-year-old who says, I wanna go home, but this child has been in an abusive home, that conflicts with what's gonna be in their best interest. And that's why it's important for what we do, that we represent best interest, that everybody else has a legal stance and they have to abide by certain rules and regulations, whereas we can kind of say, no, we don't think that's gonna work. That's not gonna happen. Dealing with that right now. The department is like, hey, grandma passed background checks, why can't we move with grandma? No, because mom and grandma can't stand each other. They get along today, and 3 days later, they'll be fighting and ready to kill each other. And so we've had to go before the courts and state this is not going to work for these kids if we're seeking stability while this mom works our services. So you just kind of be that voice that gets to speak up when others can't, or you be that reinforcement when everybody's on the same page. And that's typically what you want to do, is build a partnership and a relationship. Doesn't mean you're going to always agree, but if you learn to respect each of you have a role, I think you will get very far. When I worked with CPS, I had 2 volunteers, and we had many days at the table where they were like, well, Chantel, I just don't understand, I just don't agree. And I'm like, we'd have to agree to disagree, because I'm bound to do certain duties. Because as a caseworker, they're bound to look out for the entire family. As a volunteer, you're responsible for that child and that child's best interest. Not to say you don't care about the parents, because you still evaluate their services, but the department's goal is to keep that family intact no matter what, if at all possible. And that's where we differ. And that's where our lines are drawn, because we are focusing on the children where they're focusing on not just the kids, but the parents as well. The whole aspect. Legally, emotionally, mentally, physically, all of it. So, yeah. Anything else?
What questions do you have for Chantel? She really is a wealth of knowledge about the system and about how CPS operates. Except I would say half the caseworkers that worked there when you were there is gone. I was going to say she has the inside story on most of them, but
pretty much
they're all gone.
The turnover with the department is ridiculous. There is no easy fix. Go ahead.
Why is that?
I mean, it's like anything. It's just life. Everything varies. For me, I have 4 small children that were under the age of 10 at the time. And so trying to balance that and manage a caseload, and I'm having, like, it got to the point where I was keeping up with the children on my caseload, doctor's appointments, and my kids were missing their own annual appointments. Because you do kind of get engulfed in it, and it takes an emotional toll on you. Every day it's something, constantly. You know, they'll tell you, you can plan out your schedule, doesn't mean it's going to happen that day. Because if a placement, what they call, breaks down, as a caseworker, you're responsible for going to get that kid. So if the kid is in New Mexico and New Mexico is saying you have to come get a kid, you have to jump on the plane to go to New Mexico to get that kid. So that is kind of taxing on your duties and things to that effect. Support is everything. And so if you don't have a strong support network, it's kind of hard if you have a family and things to that effect. Some of it is just a stepping stone for many people. You know, they get out of school, they think that, oh, I'm going to save the world and bless their little hearts. And they realize that that's just not the avenue, or that's just, they needed a piece of that. So it varies for so many reasons on why it changes. I don't think there's ever going to be a fix. At one point in time, it was the money. So they did the pay raises last year. But it still didn't keep them. I just don't think that it's an easy fix. And it just takes a lot.
What's the average caseload now per CPS worker? Or what is the caseload?
So the way they do theirs is by children. That's your caseload. And you can have anywhere from 15 to 30 plus kids. And that may be a sibling group of 5 or 6, or that may be individual children. And I think that's also what takes a toll on people, is because you're required to see all of those children each month. So that means if you have a child in El Paso and all these different places, you pretty much have to get out there. There's some leeway that if they're so many miles out, you have to go see them every quarter, but you got to remember, hey, I need to go see this kid in 2 months, or things like that. And so it's just coordinating that. So not only are you visiting children, but then you have to keep up with parents, and you have to keep up with their services, and making sure that you're their support system too. So you're trying to encourage them, because I tell anybody, it takes almost 3 to 4 months for parents to get engaged. So don't ever hold it against a parent when you get a case that they just don't care about their kids. No, most of them either have some form of drug addiction or mental health issues, so it's going to take a minute for them to click. You know, the beginning is the whole poor me stage, you know, and it's like, it's not about you, it's about your kids, but they don't understand that. So I tell people it takes about 3 or 4 months to get them into the process and to get them kind of going and seeing the big picture. But, so yeah.
And can you talk about month 5 or 6,
yes,
where the department is?
So you have, after your adversary, once temporary managing conservatorship is in place, from the time that the ex parte happens, you have 45 days. And so you have 30 days for the ex parte. I'm mixing that up.
Yeah, so 14 for the adversary, 60 for the removal for status.
Well, for the removal, but for the status hearing, and then you have 45 days basically to have a family group conference.
Oh.
Once the case has been opened, and that is getting all the players at the table. So that's the parents, that's the attorneys, that's family and friends, whoever these people consider to be a support system. I have sat in a room with almost 20 people. It is not uncommon.
And CASA is there?
Yes. So all the players are there. It's CASA, the attorneys. Typically the children don't participate depending on their age. Investigations comes in, conservatorship is there, and then again, whoever these people decide they want to invite. They could be the next door neighbor, but that's their support system, so they're entitled. And then don't be surprised if it's just 6 of you sitting there, because they can restrict who they want there and who they don't want there as far as outside parties. CASA and all legal parties automatically have a seat at the table. They don't get to kick us out. I have a mom who tried that today, and she was so upset. She's like, I don't think, who is she and why is she here? And I was like, CASA. And so I have 2 CASAs on this case. She's like, well, I only want 1 in the room. I said, well, it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, all 3 of us get to be here. So yeah, we all have a seat at the table, whether they like it or not.
And then what I was kind of thinking about was, we tell parents or we tell families they've got 12 months, but really about month 6 or 7, CPS is looking real hard
right. So
at whether or not mom and dad are going to get it together.
Right. So you have the family group conference. That is where they develop their service plan and what services are going to work throughout the case. That's presented to the judge typically at the status hearing. And after the status hearing, it's pretty much when you want to get the ball rolling. If they don't make a family group conference, they can still have what they call a permanency conference. Exact same thing, but just it's outside of that deadline, so they can no longer call it a family group conference. Don't be surprised if in investigations you hear that they had a family team meeting. That's the exact same thing, but in investigations. Is there a support system? Is there somebody who can help them? And that's some of the tools that they use to determine whether they're going to do family-based safety services or conservatorship. It's through that family team meeting. Who is the support system? Can we safely put these children in a home without putting them in foster care? And then after that, you have your initial permanency hearing, which is approximately 3 months after. It's like 90 days in between hearings after that. Then you hit your 5-month mark between your initial permanency and your permanency before the final, before you get ready to go to trial. And that's when the department has, at any time the department can change their permanency goal, but they typically won't change it until that 5th month. Again, it takes about 3 to 4 months to get a parent engaged. And if they don't see an improvement, then they will change that permanent goal from family reunification to some form of adoption, termination of rights, something to that effect at the 5th month. And then that's also where we sit at the table and we can agree or disagree with that goal as well. They still have the ultimate say-so, but we can take it to the judge too. And then after that, you prepare for trial. If there's going to be a trial, somewhere in between that 5th month and the final, if you can, you'll do mediation. And that's to avoid doing termination of rights. At that time, sometimes parents will just say, I'll relinquish. I think if my kid can go stay with my Aunt Susie and everybody is okay with that, then I'll relinquish my rights. And those are some of the outcomes we've had in mediation. Or to avoid terminating rights, hey, how about you can have visitation, but Aunt Susie will be responsible for caring for these children until they're 18. And we'll write out an agreement. If they have like substance abuse issues, we've written it out so to their stair steps, where a mom has to go drug test. They're responsible for paying for it. They have to provide it to the caregiver, and they have to be negative so many times before they can have unsupervised visitation with their children. Right here.
Do you see maybe, like, does the mediation happen before that final hearing or after?
Before the final. So your final hearing is your trial. Once you make it to trial, there's typically no going back. Yeah.
Could you, I'm sorry, who else has a question?
Right.
When you said we, you know, we write out the, are you saying CPS or CASA?
So CASA participates in what those stair steps look like. The department is responsible for all of that writing of documentation.
Yeah.
We just get to throw our input in there and say, this is what we want to see.
And then
We're only responsible for our court reports. That's pretty much it.
is there any follow-up with the kids once they're placed somewhere? So like the 12 months have passed, the child's been placed with Aunt Susie, like you said.
So
Does anyone ever like touch base with the kids like a year later?
I have some permanency has been achieved, and they still maintain a relationship with their children. I sit on the fence on that. But I have one, he's young enough that he has a volunteer fixated, and so when she doesn't come to see him, he's like, you didn't come see me last month, where were you? But, you know, she can do it, and it's been healthy for him. I don't recommend it because you don't want to have 15 kids that you're attached to, but I'm not totally against it either. I think it all depends. We have, right now it's a case that we've been on for like 3 years. I was the caseworker on that case and then moved over. They're finally being adopted. But the last time the volunteers went to court, they asked if they could start Skyping. Typically that does not happen, I promise you. This is like the first case, but what was happening was every time they would come, it would send the children into anxiety because they felt like the CPS case was never going to close, and it would just kind of send them into a whirlwind. So sometimes it's not beneficial to keep a relationship. It's all children don't see it as a positive, put it that way.
Okay.
Boy, I totally forgot. Oh, the difference between relinquishment and termination, and then we'll have to start the role play.
Sounds good to me. Difference between relinquishment and termination. Termination, the state deems you unfit to be a parent if they terminate your parental rights. But that termination with Judge Delaney feels that every parent should have a chance. That is his take on it. So though your parental rights can be used against you as a ground in a future case. But he feels that everybody should have a chance and that people can change. So not to say that other judges don't, but if you've been terminated so many times, that can be used against you. Relinquishment of your rights basically states that you forfeit your rights, so you still have the eligibility to maintain your children. If you were to have more kids, you're not going to have the red flags that would go up if you were to terminate your rights. Depending on how your rights are terminated, yes, it is red flagged at a hospital. Depending on the severity of it, you have some that like to travel and move around, and they think, oh, if I go have my baby in 3 counties away, nobody will know. Not always. It doesn't always work.
So what happens like if PMC is granted to whatever, to like or not even PMC, like right to terminate or whatever, and Aunt Susie has the kids, but then she's like, you know what, I'm gonna give them back to mom, even though like, you know
She would
what
have
I'm
a
saying?
CPS case against her.
Yeah, but like how would y'all figure that out?
Most likely those children would have to be enrolled in school and somebody would be responsible for them. And you'd be surprised how many forget that, hey, oh, we have a court order. And that's what some families do. They think, well, after 5 years, we can do what we want, and it doesn't work like that. So, yeah.
I have one more question. At the very beginning, you were saying, like if not enough evidence is brought, the judge could just dismiss them and let the kids go home or whatever, back with their families. So how, when the parents, if they get called again, how is that not like, I don't know, please don't laugh at me, but like, how is that not like double jeopardy? Does that make sense?
It doesn't apply.
Okay.
It's not the same.
Because it's not the same crime, or it's just,
And this is civil. So completely different from criminal.
Well, I didn't, you know, I just.
No,
felt like-
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
no, I say that because when I first came in, I have a CJ degree. So my DA was like, this is not criminal, this is civil, we have some room. Yeah, there's wiggle room, and then it's family law. And CPS, again, the idea is to preserve the family at all possible. So there are some, you can kind of bend some things that you typically wouldn't bend in other areas of the law. When it comes to family, I mean, I will say the state and the federal government, they're gonna do whatever they can to preserve.
So they can be charged like multiple, over and over and over.
I have one who says as long as she has a uterus, she will continue to have children. Because you can't sterilize them, you can't do anything, so as long as they keep having kids and she continues to test positive when she has these babies, she'll keep having cases against her. All it does is speed up the process though, as time goes by. So for instance, if she's at kid 5 and this is something that we've done, typically she won't get the whole year. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, just a question. Generally speaking, how does CPS view CASA? The CPS caseworkers.
Chantel loved CASA.
I did. But I love my CASA because I was spoiled. I'm not gonna lie. I was spoiled, and I'm not saying you have to go spoil yours, but they spoiled me rotten. But at the same time, communication was everything. And again, like I said, we had to learn to agree to disagree, and we had to learn each other's boundaries. I had to understand that they were volunteers and they were gonna push the envelope, because I've had some call me and pretty much tell me what I was going to do, and I had to remind them as a caseworker, no, not necessarily. It's not how that works. So I think communication is everything. If they don't respond to you immediately, don't take it personal. Please don't. You're probably one of the 50 people that are calling, leaving messages, sending emails, so give them some time. If you do have an issue with contacting a caseworker, then get a hold of your supervisor, and then we have ways of finagling that and making some things happen. But yeah, please don't take it personal. I tried to call you 5 times in 5 days. Oh God, really? So, but ours was communication and be transparent. That's it. I mean, if you don't agree or you don't see something a certain way, tell them what you're thinking. They can't assume it. And you may actually open up their eyes to seeing something differently. I don't know how many times I've sat at the table with my CASAs as a caseworker, and I was like, okay, I didn't think about it that way. What can we do to kind of help get these services? Because you also may be that resource for a service. Typically, CPS caseworkers are going to go through their contracted service providers. They're not going to necessarily think outside of the box because they have to go through certain funding. But if you know of a program or something to that effect, it's okay to forward it to the caseworker and let them look into it, because it may be something that can be paid for through the department. They just need to have approval to do it. So don't ever be afraid to give a resource or anything like that, but yeah, just remember your role.
Remember your role. All right, so speaking of roles, all right, so everybody has their interview questions you came up with last week, right? If not, you'll do a good job anyway. So, now Chantel, you can keep sitting in the tall chairs. All right, let me make sure that the camera is on you. Oh, just kidding. All right, I'm going to move this around. So, you are interviewing from the Quinn end down there. Joyce is going to be, tell us who you are.
I am the therapist for Robert and Ben.
Okay, so this is information you probably aren't getting from the video, and information you probably don't have in your Optima notes. I think in Optima all we have is psych eval for mom and therapy notes for mom. So if you want to ask the therapist for the kids anything you want to know, Ashton is the school counselor for the kids. So this is Ashton Harris, our coordinator you haven't met yet, one of them. And Ashton has been here almost exactly a year. She was in this training this time last year as a staff member. So we're happy we didn't run her off, and she's still here. And so she'll be school counselor for Ben and Robert. Then I'm going to jump down here to Chantel, who's foster mom for baby Rose. And then the ever lovely Kathy Lord Jones will be Kathy Price. So our Kathy will be Kathy. All right, so the expectation is that everybody will ask questions. If somebody asks your question, hurry and raise your hand next time, okay? And then, because we want everybody to ask questions. We're going to give this probably till 6:30 or 6:35, depending on Come on in, Chris. We want you to be part of the group. This is Chris Wills, CASA in real life. Sit anywhere you like, Chris. Except up front, unless you want to play one of the roles.
No, thank you.
No, okay. So, all right, so who should we start with? I say, no, Chantel, we already heard her. All right. Joyce, our therapist for the boys. Who'd like to ask the first question of the therapist? Yes, Jason.
How has the bullying been handled by Robert? Has there been any?
He's been doing okay. I think he's dealing with it well with his dad and his grandma, and they're talking to him a lot about it. But he's working through it.
Oh, all right, I'm going to go Jennifer, then Michael, and then Jane. Jennifer.
Are the boys open to therapy? Are they actually engaged or just completely ignoring everything?
At the beginning, it was really hard to get them to talk to that pretty typical boys their age or any kid their age, any youth their age. They are hard to get information out of. They're getting more comfortable with me and willing to talk more about certain things. A lot of times it's just we're having a conversation and I might ask them to explain something further. And that's kind of how we're having to deal with it, the therapy. But they seem to be getting more open with me.
Okay, Michael?
Ben had a problem with asthma. Did he ever get the meds lying down and visits with the doctor?
I really don't know. I knew he was having that problem, but that's more of a caseworker thing. Sorry, I don't know about that one.
Good. And then, Jane, you had a question?
What is the, what is your observation about the relationship between the two siblings and how that will be affected if they're separated?
They seem really bonded. Ben seemed to have taken kind of a head of household role, that's the word I'm looking for. And in that he took care of his younger siblings and tried to always be in charge. So I think the separation between him and his brother is really difficult on him. They get to see each other at school, from what I understand, which makes it a little easier, but not seeing him and not seeing his little sister all the time is really hard on Ben. Robert seems to be doing okay. I think it's because he has his father to kind of help him out with that.
And Kat, you had a question, and then Linda.
Yes. Do the kids talk about their mom, and if so, how do they speak of her?
Ben just wants to get everybody back together. And so when he talks about his mom, it's kind of in that form, in that he just wants the family back together. Robert sometimes talks about her. I think he sees Ben more as that head of household type figure. And so his mom was just there. He loves his mom, but he doesn't discuss a lot without her.
Linda?
Oh, it's a bit of a two-parter. How's Ben coping with the loss of his dog?
He hasn't said much about it. He's upset, but when he does talk about it, but that's about all I know.
Okay. Do you think that if there is something later on with regard to, say, relative placement, that having his dog be a part of that would be something that would be in his best interest emotionally?
Possibly. That's a really good question. I've never got that question.
I love dogs.
I mean, everybody, he seems to have an attachment to the dog, but it's not something that we talk about a lot, but I think possibly having that dog in the next placement would be helpful.
So you think right now just the reassurance that he's gotten from the CASA that the dog is being well taken care of is sufficient for him emotionally?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Nancy and then Chris.
What are your immediate concerns for the boys?
Ben seems to be a little bit down with, and I think a lot of it is the situation he's in, which happens a lot with youth in foster care, just the depression that they get. I wouldn't call him completely depressed. I would just think that he's a little upset and trying to deal with that at this point. And Katie, you can tell me he's a little slightly down.
That's okay.
Robert seems to be doing well. I think the transition was hard at first, but once he got placed with his father, he's done a lot better.
Okay. Wait, we had Nancy, Chris, and then we'll come back to Linda. Chris, go ahead.
Okay. Do both the kids want to be at home, or are they hesitant, or do they mostly just want to be together?
I think they mostly just want to be together. Ben wants to have everybody back home. Robert enjoys being with his dad. He's thriving with his father and his grandmother, but he does miss his brother.
Linda?
Oh, I was just going to ask, how do you plan to address the concerns you have about Ben? And what assessments, if any, do you suggest for Baby Rose?
I don't see Baby Rose.
Oh, I'm sorry. You
So,
don't see her at all?
no.
No, that's okay.
So yes, I don't see Baby Rose, but I just see the boys.
Okay.
With Ben, it's just a lot of continued therapy. We meet, once a week to go through that and talk and discuss.
So there's nothing specific with regard to art therapy, for example, that you might suggest further to help
Possibly,
him?
we could look into that, yeah.
Good. Kat, did you have a question? Somebody else raised their hand? I'm sorry, I thought you did. No pressure. All right, who else has
Not really
questions?
back table.
I know, back here's kind of
Or
quiet.
right here.
Anthony and then Jennifer.
So I have kind of a two-parter. First, do you see the kids together, or is it independent? And if it is independent, do you notice any kind of either, not necessarily discrepancies, but just different interpretations of their home life, both before being removed and their current?
I see them separately, so I see them individually. We have not started family therapy. I think family therapy is always a great idea in situations like this. But no, we have not. I see them individually, and they're different situations, obviously, because they are both placed with family, but it's a different types of family. One's his father, one's the aunt. They deal with it in different ways because Ben feels kind of as like an outsider within the family home. He feels like a burden sometimes, and so it's addressing that and letting him know that it's all that it's okay. His aunt wants him to be there, and then Robert, obviously with his father, he just is being. It's just like he feels like a normal family unit.
Great. Now, who did I say was next? Yes, Jennifer, sorry.
Are both of the boys making their appointments scheduled as they're supposed to?
Yes, they're both here as often as they're supposed to be.
Good. Yes, this Jennifer.
It's just a general question. Will a therapist actually answer as much as she just did?
A therapist is probably going to, at the most, give you a summary. You'll probably never talk to them directly. You'll probably email them, but you can get their therapy notes if all else fails. And we'll talk about this in the court report. You can get their therapy notes from CPS. We try to get it from the source first. So Chantel will talk about that in court report writing. Well, I've obtained these notes, but I'm still attempting to contact Dr. Jones, this way. Yeah, good question.
And it does depend on the placement, because I have a couple of people that actually speaks directly to the therapist face-to-face or on the phone. But most are email. I have one therapist that refuses to talk to CASA, and everything goes through CPS.
It's just going to depend on the therapist. Yes, Jason.
Like, how often do they go to the therapist? Is that scheduled?
Yeah, you'll know it. Yeah, it'll be in the service plan. So it could be once a week, it could be once a month. It's just going to depend on the situation. Yeah, every kid's going to be different. Who else has questions for therapists? Joyce, you've answered so much. Dr. Joyce, all right. Who was Dr.
Quinn?
Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. There she is. That baby cracks me up. All right. She's so cute with that red hair. Oh, Ashton, she's really looking at you. Ashton's next. She's our school counselor for Ben and Robert. So, who'd like to ask our school counselor? I'm going to let Marissa, Sarah, and then Lacey. Marissa?
Okay, so before the kids were taken out of their home, did you have any previous meetings with them?
I did.
Okay. Sarah?
Okay, so kind of piggyback on that question. So how did you get introduced to, did they come to your office? Were you told to go reach out to them? How did you get put in the equation of both of the kids?
They came to the office and we started to build a rapport with them.
Great. Kat, what it was, hold on. I got confused. We'll go with Kat, and then we'll come back here. All right. Then we go with Lacey. You go first, because I remember you now.
Has there been any attendance issues or behavioral issues since they were removed from their life?
No, ma'am, it's still very early on in the school year, so not really anything that's out the ordinary.
Okay. Kat.
Have there been any more instances of bullying, and is there anything being done that you know of to
Yes, Jason, and then Lindsay?
Do either of the boys have an IEP set?
Currently, no.
Is one needed, do you think?
I think for Ben, one is needed.
One thing.
How are they socializing in the classroom?
I really don't know. I haven't had any feedback. Again, it's very early on in the school year, but I don't think there's anything alarming that's kind of going on.
Good, Sarah?
What concerns do the boys bring to you? What do they talk about?
Just really how they miss each other. I really haven't delved that deep into CPS removal. It's one of the things that they address with the therapist. Right now, my focus is really building a rapport and establishing trust with the boys before I can give them information.
Linda?
How much communication do you have with the teachers? The teachers are apprised, have they been apprised of the situation regarding the boys?
I think they're aware, but our communication at this point is limited, so I don't really know how much they know about what occurred.
Okay. Caitlin?
What exactly prompted their first visit to you? You said they came to your office first?
I think boys reached out to the teachers, maybe wanted to talk, and they just the teacher redirected them to me. So I only met with them a couple of times.
Anthony?
How much time would you say that the boys are able to interact with each other during school? I know since they're in different grades, are they able to have lunch together? Is there like a recess period or something like that?
I think it's more so hallway interaction, not a lot of interaction occurs.
Nancy?
Have you had any contact with the parents?
No, ma'am, I haven't.
Good questions. Everybody's asking good questions. All right. All right, is everybody asking, are there questions getting asked? Do you have other questions you want to ask? What other questions do we want to ask of the school counselor? Ashton's getting off easy. Yes, Sandra?
How are the grades? You said it's early in the semester, so maybe you can't answer, but how are their grades?
I don't think anything is concerning at this point. Like you said, it's very early on in the school year. So,
Jennifer? No, sorry. This Lindsay, and then Smith. Sorry. I got a lot of Jennifers in
I
here.
know, there's a lot of I have kind of a follow-up question to that. I know you've only met with them a couple of times, but do you feel like they're kind of on par with their peers as far as behaviors, performance?
Ben seems very withdrawn, whereas Robert, I see him engage more. He's more social than Ben is.
Okay, good.
Do you intend to keep seeing them regularly, and if so, how frequently?
Yes, I definitely want to see them more frequently. It would be my hope to meet with them at least twice a week at this point.
Okay, good.
Noting, I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Noting Ben's withdrawal, what specifically are you thinking that you might want to do to deal with that? Counteract that?
I would like to reach out to his therapist to kind of see if we can come up with a plan for him.
Good. Marissa?
Do you think there's anything at school, like school-related programs that could be beneficial to the boys, like clubs or?
Sports. I think sports would really definitely help Ben come out of his shell.
Good questions. Anything else for school counselor Ashton? I'm sorry, go ahead,
Do
Sarah.
you think with boys, do they talk about friends at any point? Do they get connected?
More so at this point, it's more so talking about each other. We don't hear a lot about friends and connections, but definitely they talk about each other a lot.
Good. Anything else? All right. Well, Chantel, you're up. Foster mom. You know we saved the best for last. Kathy Price will be last. So foster mom for baby Rose. All right, Seth?
Have you noticed improvement or decline in Rose's health and development since you've gotten her?
I've seen some improvements, though she does carry traits of fetal alcohol syndrome, so that's still being evaluated by her physician.
Okay, good, Sarah.
So, what is her sleeping pattern like?
She sleeps pretty regularly. She goes to bed probably about 8, about 8-ish, and will sleep through the night, and wakes up somewhere around 6 in the morning.
Okay, Jen?
Have there been any sibling visits or anything scheduled?
She has had a sibling visit, but we're still working on coordinating those on a more consistent basis.
Great, Mr. Malone?
I didn't do a blank. But how is her motor skills? I know I was reading that she had problem moving, crawling and stuff like that. How has that increased?
So-
Or has it decreased? Or got better?
We're dealing with that with the doctor, and we're setting up an appointment with her with the developmental specialist.
Good. Who was next? I didn't see. Yes, Jason, and then someone else had
Right
their hand.
here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's let Jason go, and then you can go, Linda.
Does Rose have her own room?
She does have her own.
Okay, Linda?
How does Rose interact with her mother?
I don't think she's had any visits with her.
Oh, she
and I
hasn't
don't
had a visit with
understand
her mother?
Why she hasn't had any visits with her mom, or why she should have visits with her mom.
I thought she was scheduled for supervised visits. No, not
She
yet.
hasn't showed up.
Never mind.
That's okay. That's good information to have. Okay, Nancy, then this Jennifer.
Do you have any other foster children in your home?
Not at this time.
Okay, Jennifer?
So this is kind of more general as well, but are we able to ask at this point when it's most convenient to visit?
Sure.
Rose? When is it most convenient to? What form would it be?
I have a pretty open schedule right now, so it's just a matter of coordinating, but I know I'm tired of setting time aside and mom not showing up for her visits.
Yeah. Question, who else had a question? Linda?
I'm sorry, but specifically, what negative behaviors or developmentally delayed behaviors do you observe in Rose?
I don't have any negative behaviors of her due to her age, but developmentally, again, she carries the trace of the fetal alcohol syndrome, and so we're working on that.
Specifically, how does that manifest itself? How's that show?
As far as some of the delays in her developmentally, with the crawling and the babbling and things to that effect. So that's why we're having that evaluated.
Good. All right. Caitlin?
Have you noticed any positive changes in her behavior? Like, is she developing like any new changes, like trying to sit up?
And it's only been such a short period of time, so we haven't really been able to evaluate that just yet.
Anyone back here? Anyone? Anyone? Now, foster mom has a wealth of information for you, I'm sure. Marissa?
How much is she eating and like what times is she eating? Is she eating regularly?